Good morning. Good morning. So good to see you all this morning. Those of you who saw that it was daylight savings and braved the cool weather, it's great to see you, and it's great to have you with us. Those of you who stayed home in your warm jammies and maybe are hopefully turning on the 9 o'clock news and are finding something else. Wow. And I see that it's a little too chilly for anybody to be out in the pavilion, so isn't it nice that we've at least lifted our restrictions so people can feel a little more comfortable? I see a number of masks, and thank you for that. We are each now left up to our own devices to figure out what we want to do, so welcome back, and welcome to this service this morning. My name is Tony Fisher. I serve this congregation as its minister, and happily I do that. And as always, this morning I'm joined by a great group of people. We have Sean and John not Sean and John. Sean's over here. Dan and John are back in the AV room. Sean and Abby, I can't make that rhyme, are over here presenting us some great music. And I'm very grateful this morning to have Janet Hoffman as our worship associate. On to you.
Thank you, and good morning. We are so glad that you have joined us, whether you are here in the sanctuary, watching us on Facebook Live at home, or if anyone does end up braving out on the pavilion. We are no less grateful if you have found another time to watch the recorded version on Facebook or YouTube. If you are new to our congregation, we are especially thankful that you have found us. Our hope is to have you feel welcome and find ways to connect. Our mission states that we are a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Here, we learn and grow together. We try to live our values both within these walls and outside. If you have found us for the first time, we also hope that you will email our administrator at office@uunaples.org so we can include you in our email blasts that will let you know about all the things that are happening here at UUCGN. And now, let's settle ourselves into this time of worship with the morning's prelude.
Welcome into this place of gratitude and generosity. Welcome into this place of hope and healing. In our comings and our goings, we are reminded once again that we are not alone, that we are accompanied by the brave and loving people who came before us, that here there are companions ready to catch us when we fall and encourage us as we learn and grow on this journey called life. That here we can truly be ourselves, eye to eye and shoulder to shoulder with others on the journey. This may be our most important work, to remember that who we are does not end at the edges of our own skin, but that we are a part of something greater. Let's join in the chalice lighting response. May this flame stir our hearts and remind us of our mission to be truly welcoming, to grow in mind and spirit, and to widen the circle of peace, justice, and love. And please feel free to sing along with our opening hymn, Wake Now My Senses. Words will be on your screen.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your view well. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor, beauty, and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limits and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love the whole human race.
I've had a good number of emails this past week or the last couple of weeks from folks expressing a sense of helplessness, I guess, in some way in the face of the tragedy in the Ukraine. We're appalled by the audacity and the brutality of this invasion. And while we are peace-minded people, we are also nonetheless inspired by the resilience and the tenacity of the Ukrainian people. It's such a difficult time. And yet, despite suffering our collective PTSD following the last two presidential campaigns, the COVID pandemic, the racial, the social, the political unrest, and now growing economic concerns, our nation has found at least some degree of solidarity in our compassion for the Ukrainian people. And of course, we want to express that solidarity in any way we can. We want to do something for the millions of people who have been displaced. And, of course, we don't think that anything we can do is enough, and therefore we feel a little bit helpless. And I think the anxiety that we all feel is not simply directed overseas. We have a concern about our own lives here in the United States, and particularly here in Florida, not quite believing that those who are trying to control our culture and the truth don't see that they are following the same path as those we deplore overseas. And from a practical point of view, all a minister can do is suggest that we all give as generously as we possibly can to the relief agencies that are on the ground working near the Ukrainian borders, and also to act locally to change the course of events here. As I said to one person in a response last night, it's sort of a spend globally, act locally response. In the past few decades, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, rather than trying to duplicate efforts of so many agencies, grassroots agencies on the ground, have worked to create a network of organizations where they know that they support, that they know can do good work when things happen. And also to suggest to the rest of us, where we can put our monies to help immediately the cause of the refugees and humanitarian aid. So on the back of your order of service today, there are 5, I think, or 4 agencies, all available, easily discovered online, all recommended by the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. So I urge you to give generously to those. There are, I know, a couple of local responses to the Ukrainian situations with ties to both the local Ukrainian community and with direct ties to the Ukraine. And if you wish to find those, they are easily discoverable, again, online. So I urge you to look into those as well. In my newsletter article, I also suggested that of equal importance is that we take care of ourselves. We've been trying to do this for 2 years in the midst of a pandemic, and we're all tired. And yet, if we can work to keep ourselves centered so that we can be that calm presence in a somewhat troubled world, that can go a long way. The wonderful spiritual writer, Father Richard Rohr, talks about 2 critical moments in the formation of a balanced and resilient life. The first is that moment when you know that your one and only life is absolutely valuable and alive. And the second moment is when you know your life as presently lived is entirely entirely pointless and empty. I don't know about you, but I know both that exhilaration and that desolation. What Rohr says, however, is that we need both of those experiences to keep us moving on the right path, to provide the balance we need to face the world. The first such moment gives us energy and joy by connecting us with our ultimate source and ground, that which gives us a sense of meaning and purpose. And from that second moment, we learn about limits and boundaries and a deep humility, so that we understand that the answers to the challenges and woes of this world cannot be found within our own small self, but must come from a continued desire to connect with that which grounds us, the source of our being, or as many might describe, that which is greater than ourselves. This is the reason for spiritual community, a place to connect with others, to consider together the path ahead, and to find the equanimity we seek to meet the demands of each new day. Let's center ourselves with our hymn, Find a Stillness.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find a true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find a true harmony.
As we gather this day, so many lives in the world are disrupted, are changed forever, moving from home to the unknown. And so our hearts must be with those folks. And for each of us, who sometimes find ourselves decentered from what we know and love, simply through the news of a loved one having a bad diagnosis, or even ourselves. Or we can be lifted up by the joys of being in community, or the joys of those we love, our own successes. If you have a joy or a name that you would like to shout out this morning, I hope you'll do so, both here and at home, and on the pavilion. Joys and sorrows. I'll add Richard Caden's name to that as Richard continues to struggle with the death of his partner, Jake Rose, a week ago. And for all those names that have been spoken, And for all those who did not have someone here to speak their name, we light this candle of community. And let's center ourselves for a time of meditation. Spirit of life, God of our deepest understanding, let us always begin from a place of gratitude. When we are happy or when we are broken, may we be grateful for the ability to feel and share deeply. When the world tugs at us with its challenges and woes, may we be thankful for our own power to act for good. When we reach out to others, may we know our compassion as a grateful response for what we have been given. And when we seek solitude, let us breathe humbly for the ability to find our own depths. When we act thoughtlessly or foolishly, may we be grateful for conscience and for the power to learn and to make amends. And when we act with kindness and skill, may we honor those who have been our guides and teachers. When we share our stories and listen to the stories others have to tell, let us be thankful for the blessings of family and friends and community. Spirit of love, when we begin with gratitude for the wholeness of life and all that we hold dear, there comes a quiet power to meet the needs and challenges of our years. Let's share some time in silence.
This piece comes from Reverend Danny Crosby, who is a Unitarian minister at 2 churches in Northwest England. He regularly writes a blog called I Dream of the Ocean, and I will read an edited version of his writing from Humility, grounded in our common humanity. I suspect that to be truly humble is to be at home with our own humanity, to be grounded in our own reality. I also suspect that humility has something to do with being grounded in our shared humanity too. To be truly humble is to recognize that we are a part of something larger than our singular selves. Dag Hammarskjöld, the former United Nations Secretary General, said, "Humility is just as much the opposite of self-abasement as it is self-exaltation. To be humble is not to make comparisons. Secure in its reality, the self is neither better nor worse, bigger nor smaller than anything else in the universe. It is nothing, yet at the same time, one with everything." The prophet Micah preached, "He has told you what is good, to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." This is not about being meek or servile. It is not being self-sacrificial, an excuse for suffering. My own version of Micah's words would be that true humility is recognizing the virtue of doing justice, living in love, and recognizing our common humanity. Humility is at the core of my understanding of my Unitarian faith. I believe that we are a truly humble faith. Our tradition is open and accepting. We welcome diversity. We honor one another's points of view. These are not, by their very nature, acts of humility. In doing so, are we not accepting that each of us has limits to our own individual perspectives, that we need to listen to one another in order to see new and deeper truths, that we cannot make sense of anything alone? This is a free religion in its essence, this coming together and experiencing more than we could have imagined alone, by coming together in love. Humility is understanding that others who see things differently can expand our own perceptions. I will end with the words from part of Margaret Wheatley's meditation called "Disturb Me, Please." What if we were willing to listen to one another with the awareness that we each see the world in a unique way, and with the expectation that I could learn something new if I listen to the differences? We have this opportunity many times in a day, every day. What might we see? What might we learn? What might we create together? If we become the kind of listener, the one who enjoys differences and welcomes in disturbance. And then we would be wonderfully comforted by how much closer we became. Because every time we listen well, we move towards each other. From our new thoughts and our new companions, we would all become wiser. it would be more fruitful to explore this strange and puzzling world if we were together. When we are willing to be disturbed by newness rather than clinging to our certainty, when we are willing to truly listen to someone who sees things differently, wonderful things happen. We learn that we don't have to agree with each other to explore together. There is no need to be joined together at the head, as long as we are joined together at the heart.
For we do not own the winds, for we do not own the winds, the winds. Then what we must always do, what we must always do, is adjust ourselves, adjust ourselves, adjust ourselves, ourselves, for we do not own the winds. The winds.
So with the time change this morning, once again, I found myself driving to the congregation here in the pre-dawn hours, a time when I think of as just a wonderful time to be able to reflect, when the light is not sufficient to create the stark differences or to show up the stark differences that exist in our world. And I also thought this morning, at least reflected this morning, that it takes a bit of audacity for someone who gets up here every Sunday and spouts off for 20 minutes or so to talk about humility. It's really an interesting juxtaposition of things. But also, driving to work in the beautiful pre-dawn this morning, the sky was orange along the horizon and moving up to a deep blue. It was lovely. I thought about that perhaps this was the same sort of vision that the native people, the Calusa here in this area, sort of saw on a morning before sunrise. And also how much we could learn from our Native American brothers and sisters. In the Lakota way, humility was a virtue that was expected of their leaders. A quiet, humble person, the Lakota believed, was aware of other people and other things. An arrogant, boastful person was only aware of themselves. To the traditional Lakota, humility was one virtue that enhanced the other virtues. To be generous was good, for example, as long as one didn't call attention to his or her generosity. anything good was done or said with humility carried more impact. I don't often sort of do the etymology of words, but the word humus, the decayed vegetable matter that feeds the roots of plants, comes from the same root that gives us the words human and humility. The adjective humilis, which may be translated as humble, but also as grounded or from the earth. There's a wonderful etymology which helps us understand that the humiliating events of life, the events that leave mud on our faces or that make our names mud, may create the fertile soil in which something can grow. For the Lakotas, they chose their leaders based on their humility. Which is odd because we seem to do just the opposite. We tend to elect the arrogant and boastful because that's the way the system is built. And so it is in the world. The Russian invasion of the Ukraine seems to be a total act of arrogance and involve a total lack of humility. And of course, it doesn't just exist somewhere else in the world. One of my favorite quotes from Robert Reich is that our Senate, the United States Senate, is not the world's greatest deliberative body, but it is the world's greatest stew of egos battling for attention. Which is humorous, which I think also comes from hummus. But it is a comment on our democracy. When Alexis de Tocqueville came to the United States in 1831, his immediate mission, or at least his stated mission, was to learn about our prison system. But what resulted from that visit, from that extensive tour of the United States, was a book called Democracy in America. And in that book, de Tocqueville talked about the American character and the essential elements for this new democracy and what it might take for the democracy to survive. De Tocqueville warned against the individualism, in fact, a word that one of the first people to use that word, warned about individualism in that it could prove dangerous, setting citizens apart from one another, making positive collective action difficult, if not impossible, and they were therefore threatening our free institutions. In the book Habits of the Heart, Individualism and Commitment in American Life, Robert Bellah and others, sociologists, talked about this idea of habits of the heart that de Tocqueville brought up as important elements in American democracy. And the question that those authors posed was how to preserve or create or maintain a morally coherent life in these United States. How do we create a moral ecology in which we can grow and thrive together despite our differences? The idea was to try and help us understand what we needed to do, but unfortunately that's a very difficult thing. You can certainly identify the need of creating a moral ecology, but how do you do that? The transformation has to come, the author said, not from a changed consciousness in certain individuals, they would be powerless, nor from the state, which can get to be tyrannical, but from collective action that might begin by restoring the dignity and legitimacy of democratic politics. Again, how do you get there? Bellow's book was written in 1985, de Tocqueville's in 1835. And recently, one of my favorite authors, Parker Palmer, brought up this idea once again of to Tocqueville's of habits of the heart and the need for us to engage in our democracy with these qualities. Palmer talks about 5 habits of the heart that are important for us to consider. The first is an understanding that we are all in this together. As Janet said, not just like-minded, but like-hearted. We all have the same wants and needs as human beings. We all have families, we all have cares, we all have concerns. To separate one from another in the human family will not allow a democracy to survive. We are a profoundly interconnected species, as our own principles talk about our interdependence on each other and on the planet. We must take that and make it part of our understanding of how we engage the world, and not just with like-minded people. We are dependent on all, and our survival depends on all. We are all in this together. The second thing that Parker lifts up is an appreciation of the value of otherness. We tend to spend our lives in silos, in that oasis, as we sometimes say even here, of like-minded people. And we will not begin to make changes in the world if we continue to do so. So the efforts of groups like Braver Angels and others to try to bring us together to get the conversation flowing is important. We need to respect and understand that there will be other opinions. And they matter because they are held as deeply as we hold our own. We need to be reminded of the ancient idea of hospitality in welcoming the stranger, no matter who they are. Hospitality, the idea of hospitality invites otherness into our midst. Something we find difficult to do. The third thing that Parker Palmer lifts up is an ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. One of the things we learn in seminary is the need to be able to hold the tension in an organization so that new ideas can begin to bubble up. Not try to solve the problem immediately or leap in and be the one person that can do something about it, but to hold the tension of disagreement or a struggle in power or any decision. To hold that and allow creative energies to begin to bubble up with people within the community. And let that come and let that flow. Holding that tension for a while takes an ability to stay centered and not try to lean in too directly, too quickly into conflict. not to avoid conflict, which is one of my problems, but to know that it's there, to hold it, and to let things bubble. Fourth thing that Parker Palmer lifts up is a sense of personal voice and agency. The knowledge that we have a voice, as many of us here in this congregation do because of our privileged place in this community, in this country, is something we do take for granted often. And yet, that power is not understood, not held, not appreciated by so many. I've shared the story before about participating in a workshop in the spoken word where a number of young people in Dorchester, Massachusetts, came together to learn how to present their own words. A lot of it was sort of hip-hop kind of language, expressing themselves, but they had a wonderful teacher who urged them on, and I just sat in the back and watched this. And at the end of this actually 3-week-long process, they were able to stand up in front of a group of people and express their stories through their own language. And you could see the power that filled them as they did this. The understanding that they had a voice was so powerful to see. We need to be able to encourage among all people the power to do that, to express themselves. It is part and parcel of democracy. The fifth thing and final thing that Palmer talked about was the capacity to create community. Without community, it is nearly impossible to achieve voice. One person standing in the wilderness is often not heard, but community amplifies the power of that one voice. When we are here together, supporting one another, supporting supporting the right to share, to speak our truths to power. Community allows us to do that. Without community, so many people in this world would not have achieved what they did, even if they don't look back and acknowledge it. And humility is at the heart of all these things. The kind of humility that Janet spoke about, it's not about meekness. It's not about being humble or humbling yourself. It's about a combination of being grounded, humus, in something greater than yourself, connected to others, and still having the strength of conviction to speak your truth. It comes from being firm in our values, knowing that we have a voice that needs to be heard because the truth is so powerful. And by humility, in that scenario, I mean accepting the fact that my truth, understanding that my truth is always a partial truth. So I need to listen and be respectful and open about other ideas and learn and grow from them. The American writer, activist, and conservationist Terry Tempest Williams once wrote, "The human heart is the first home of democracy. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole beings, not just our minds, and offer our attention rather than our opinions? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up ever, trusting our fellow citizens to join with us in our determined pursuit of a living democracy? Where can such habits of the heart be cultivated? Where can leaders be reminded of their place in the larger scheme of things? In communities like this, places like this, whether it be liberal or conservative, places that have worked hard for a long time to serve the common good. Here, our work is to conserve and enlarge upon those heritage of values we have received and transmit them through positive action tempered by humility. It's no small task, but it is our task, and it is what we need to do. So may it be. As I hope you think about these words, I hope you'll also take time to show your gratitude for this community and all that it does. The morning's offering for the ongoing mission of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples will be gratefully received. For those at home, the information you see on your screen is there for you to donate as well.
It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves, when I think it could be nicer being red or yellow or gold or something much more colorful like that. It's not that easy being green. It seems you blend in with so many ordinary things, and people tend to pass you over 'cause you're not standing out like flashy sparkles on the water or stars in the sky. But green is the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean, or important like a mountain, or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why, but why wonder, why wonder? I am green and it'll do fine. It's beautiful, and I think it's what I want to be.
Now is the time to fill you in on any major announcements or information about upcoming all-congregational events. Everything you need to know about all the ongoing activities here at UUCGN can be found in our Sunday news, the weekly news email, or by going online to our website at uunaples.org. While individuals may continue to take their own precautions, the UUCGN Reopening Committee announces that it has lifted all COVID restrictions at our facility. This is based on CDC information as well as the diminished rates here in Collier County. Woo, yes. Kristen Mouchette will be on the pavilion after the service to answer your questions and take registrations for next Sunday's combined Progressive Voices Tarot Workshop with Brandy Anderson, titled The Attack on Critical Race Theory in Kindergarten through 12th Grade Education and What We Can Do About It. The workshop will take place after the service next Sunday. Lunch will be provided for attendees. You can also see the poster in the lobby or in the Sunday news for additional information. Tickets will also be available out front after the service today for the Frank Corso concert that is coming Saturday evening, March 19th. Frank is a local guitarist, banjo picker, and songwriter who has gained a national reputation for having played with folks like Doc Watson and the Jay Giles Band. Those who have had opportunity to hear snippets of Frank's talent during 2 of our services this year will be excited to hear more. Wonderful Wednesdays return this week with Reverend Tony Fisher presenting a fun and informative session titled A New Look at Unitarian Universalism. This will be a look at our history and present circumstance. It hopes to answer the question, can Unitarian Universalism be relevant as we move forward into and pick one, brave, scary, hopeful, or uncertain new world? Come for the Vespers service at 5:30 and sign up for the meal through the link in the Sunday news or by calling the office. Now, let's rise for our closing hymn, number 301, Touch the Earth. The words will be on the screen.
Touch the earth, reach the sky, walk on shores while spirits fly, over the ocean, over the land, our faith, our quest to understand. Touch the earth, reach the sky, children ask the reasons why. In our lives the answers show, and by our love they learn and grow. Touch the earth, reach the sky, hug the laughter, feel the cry. May we see where we can give, for this is what it means to live. Touch the earth, reach the sky, soar with courage ever high, spirits running as we fly, to touch the earth, to reach the sky.
Those who would take over the earth and shape it to their will never, I notice, succeed. The earth is like a vessel so sacred that the mere approach of the profane, it is marred. And when they reach out their fingers, it is gone. For a time in the world, some force themselves ahead and some are left behind. For a time in the world, some make a great noise and some are held silent. For a time in the world, some are puffed fat and some are kept hungry. For a time in the world, some push aboard and some are tipped out. At no time in the world will one who is sane overreach, overspend, overrate. Go in peace. Go in love. Walk humbly on this earth.